Welcome to a new episode of Advancing Consciousness series with Franco Di Nicola. This is a place where people can come to gain further insight and clarity as to what is going on and how we can shift things on a personal and global level, while also accessing higher levels of consciousness and awareness. We bring this series to you free of charge so that many are able to access this information. However, if you resonate with what Franco shares and you would like to support his work to get more content out, contributions are welcomed and greatly appreciated. A link is in the description and will be provided in the chat if you feel guided to do so. Also, we have many previous workshops, such as the most recent, Bringing Out the New You to Play in the New World, along with our membership program, Let's Talk About You, where like-minded people come together bi-weekly to talk about the topics requiring deeper understanding and clarity. All of these are available on Teachable, and we encourage you to check them out as they are great resources at very affordable prices to assist in better understanding this human experience. The Teachable link will also be provided in the chat and is also in the description. And lastly, don't forget to share. As more of us come together who are creating shifts in themselves, the more effective it will be to shift things globally. Thank you for joining us and being part of the change. Enjoy today's broadcast.
All right. So, welcome everybody. Welcome back, actually, and to another episode of Advancing Consciousness series. This is episode 18, part 3, going deeper into the rabbit hole. As I mentioned in a bit on Facebook there, on the note at the top, was the fact that our time release red pill is releasing and allowing us to go even deeper. So that's what we're going to play with today. So we're going to go into a little bit more into what we started. Well, we started on episode part 1, 18 part 1. Now the last one we did was part 2, and now we're in part 3. We go even deeper, and we're going to look at the different stages of it. We'll see how far we can go today. If we require part 4, then we will carry on Tuesday coming up. So we were talking about what's going on with the various operating systems that we are transitioning from. Now, the reason we got into this whole looking into some of the stuff that a lot of people feel taboo, and others have looked at it as conspiracy, and others have gone polarized one way or another with, was that it was important for us to have an understanding.
Live stream doesn't seem to be on YouTube.
Do you want to launch it again? Just
How do I
reset? No, reset.
I did.
Okay. Hold on a sec. It says it's live.
Oh, it's on now. I did launch it twice, but
Technology, dance, and fun. Okay, so anyways, I was saying something. Okay, so we wanted to play with all of this so that we have an understanding how things really work, because there's a lot of misconception and a lot of effort in the polarization part. And what I mean about polarization is demonizing what may already exist, glorifying what, we may have come through originally, or the fact that the direction we need to go. So even the whole idea of ascension almost seems like the holy grail, that if we go through that, then everything changes. And there's a truth to that. But who's doing the changing? We are. It's not outside of us. So the ascension really is, or accessing more of our consciousness, is really to redesign redesign and reactivate our true nature operating system. Because we talked about it. When the original retooling happened, 15,000, we had a really powerful new matrix that was put onto the planet. It was a pure operating system, very well crafted and so forth. And then we had our own internal operating system. So it was our operating system, the Gaia's operating system, the sentient being's operating system, all of it was nicely fine-tuned. So right now, the transformation that we're going through, it's all about us to bring back that part, because 10,000 years ago, as I mentioned several times, and I'm only just glossing over it, that we went through this modification. And now, more than ever, and some people for decades have noticing that there was another way things were being done. So that meant whatever we were seeing around us, that we in most ways adopted as a way of life and started to build realities over reality, co-creating and so forth within that confine, and made that as that is our true operating system, and brought into the belief of that nature. However, there's been people could go back as 2 decades and even beyond that, some over a century ago, have started noticing that there was something else operating that was not really our original design. Now, they may not have seen it that way. They may have seen that something is off, something else is going on, and that even the idea of free will was not even that free, in the sense. When I meant free, meaning that we really got into the illusion that there was no free will, that everything was not only dictated, but the game dictated how we experience our life, which, when we really look at it, we chose to come here with that guideline, that operating system. But as we were going along and people were starting to look into the various levels of control structures or operating systems and how our basic fundamental systems work, that there was something behind that there was something off. Then when we start looking into it, with the consciousness not being as high and just getting just the awareness, then all of a sudden we started noticing there were different layers of puppets, how it was referred to, and then the puppeteers, or the ones that actually controlled how everything was coming together. Of course, now we're fast tracking, and then all of this stuff is getting uncovered. And as we uncover it collectively, it's really just to show us what's really in the works, but then what is our participation in it? What is our consent in it? What is our agreement in it? And do we really have access to change? So it's not about looking for the villains or looking for somebody to blame. It's really just to uncover that, okay, this illusionary game that we've been playing, I mean, all of it is illusionary anyways, but this illusionary game has more to it, which is now we're noticing is not really in alignment of who we are becoming. And of course, everything that's playing out energetically and otherwise is stimulating that to the surface in a big way. So when we're looking at all of that, as we see that whole operating system that exists, that we've always, it's like the Wizard of Oz, there's the wizard behind the curtain playing all of that. Now we're starting to move the curtain, we're starting to see what's really going on, and now we're assuming that was the problem at this point. Is it a problem? No. There are different facets of this system that's keeping us in that operating system, but for a very purposeful reason, because we had agreed to do so. So today, we're going to look at it a little more deeper, and we're going to get a deeper understanding and see all the facets that are connected to it, so that as we go along, we will know how to recognize it and actually take steps to shift it without going into the polarized, or in this case, giving power to the polarized, right, wrong, good, bad, victim, victimized, unfair, and all of that stuff. You were going to say something?
Yeah, someone's asking, do the cosmic laws stay the same in the organic matrix, or do they change?
Cosmic law? Okay, so any law that's put into place, okay, when we're talking cosmic law, the cosmic law is pretty well inherent as a guideline of what needs to be as part of the fundamental operating system if you're going to operate and stay online with the cosmos. Okay? So, however, there is deviations that are allowed as an experiment to give us the opportunity. And when I say us, it's not just us as planet Earth. We're talking about all the different levels of planets and within the galaxies and universe and so forth. So that is, there's a certain guideline say, okay, we do not deviate from this. And if there is any deviation, we will monitor it and make sure that it's still somewhat integral to the main plan, which is a source, the direction of growth, expansion, and moving forward. Now, of course, cosmic law, does upgrade at different times. Certain things plugged in, other things are unplugged from it, because you have to understand that everything is evolving constantly. What was required as a guideline at one point may not be required. What is not even considered as a guideline before is being plugged in too, because then at different levels of experiences, other forms of guideline needed to come into play because we've gone to another level of playing the game. So really, the main guideline is to play within all of our creations without demising or reducing or destroying any parts of its creation. Now, that was very much intact. However, when there was this other experiment come in where this other, what you call Lucifer operating system was introduced, then there was an allowance made not only for our planet, because this has happened on quite a few different planets within our galaxy, and they've gone through certain stages where they've had that and then left, and others have completely rewrote the whole operating system, and whatever the beings that were there in form were no longer there, and then it was, of course, inhabited by what we can call Luciferians or whatever, different species that are hybrids that would promote that. So one of the questions that came up, I had drawn a little box. So that's per se that this whole whiteboard is the box that I had the other day when I was showing the box. So let's say this is an analogy. This is source, okay? Just as an analogy. It's grander. What this represents, everything, all existence, all levels, nothing is outside of it. So when somebody said, well, is the ego outside of it because I drew it outside of the box? No, the ego and anything of existence is all within that field of source, okay? What is created in the field of source, first part was the split of saying, okay, one facet of this, for example, field, will maintain the integral aspect of the observer, or what we call source essence, with all the different spectrums of creation capacities. And the other part, which is half of it, scattered throughout this whole field, and I know I talked about it in one of the workshops I did. So it's like the pixels on a computer, that we have many different pixels, so small we don't even see it, so it gives us what looks like a solid picture in those pixels. So basically it's like the threads and the little pixels that are existing on this whole sourceness, that every other one went out and decided, or it was agreed upon, or with itself basically, because we're all source, to actually use that as a way of creating different realities and playgrounds. Now, at the different stages as that was taking place, then various aspects of ourself, and some may have been involved, and when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about from a soul perspective, that had reached a certain level of consciousness and certain level of mastery when it comes to the creation, then you would go into the writing and designing, and not the writing and designing like we see it as in the form. It's where you're writing codes and and layout so that we can create reality. So the whole universe, all the galaxy, all planets, everything is within this field. And then clusters come together to create what looks like planets. And within those planets, then there's all these sentient beings, which are just smaller and smaller clusters within the source. And then, of course, then there's a solar system and a galaxy with the multitudes of different solar systems within the galaxies and the universe and so forth. And then within there's even other layers of it where we've created what look like, what was parallel versions of that. So, for example, there's a parallel Earth, in a sense. Now, that is not a parallel Earth that is actually utilized for the souls that are here, because that one is already advanced and has already created one stream of experience. And this one is different. There's some similarities because the same program started, but the programs are very different because there was not that same, they're not at the same state of thing. So it's just another playground within all these playgrounds. So not to confuse things, just to give you a base idea. You were going to say something?
Yeah, Sharon is asking where your operating system originated from. I'm assuming she's saying everybody's. Where does the human operating system originate from?
Okay, so whenever we're actually, what happens is the operating system is a creation. So it basically looks at and saying, okay, let's create another planet. Now, the planets have been created for a long, long time. And this creation process. Now, of course, the universe and what we can call it is expanding. But right now, it's not expanding as much because it is contracting in certain sectors of it, just so that certain completion points are done. So the operating system are written by various aspects of ourselves that are beings in different physicalities that have really mastered. You can call them engineers. And what they do is they design playgrounds. The same way you get a bunch of engineers to come together to create an amusement park, or to create a movie, or to create any structure, a building, or anything of that nature. So you say, okay, we want to have a building. I imagine this is what it looks like. That's right. That's basically build it. What do we need to build it? All these materials and so forth. The same thing with, let's go into a computer analogy. So you want to write a software, and that software will do something. So for example, you have to have a software that edits videos, for example, or writes documents, whatever. So let's say for editing. So you have somebody, and sometimes there's more people involved, that would actually encode and design the software to work on the main software, because the computer mimics quite so much. Very much so what we've done. So then a group that have advanced and have had many experiences go together and start writing new codes and designing from source field to be able to say, okay, we're going to design and put together another playground. Now, for example, for planet Earth, it had been used over and over again, meaning that there were different programming, because a planet gets reprogrammed. I call them retooling. So what you're doing is you're going in and rewriting. So Gaia's been here a long, long time, but the operating system of Gaia gets changed. When that gets changed, it carries a different frequency, a different consciousness, a different energy, and allows different creations to reside. Example, computers have different versions of it as they go up as the main operating system. So there's many levels of main operating systems, because there's an operating system for planet Earth, and then one for the solar system, and each planet has their own operating system and so forth. And it's actually called the matrix. So the operating system is rewritten, and so when it was retooled, there was a new operating system. And so the intent was, okay, what do we want to do with planet Earth here? How do we want to utilize it? What sequence of experiences do we want to apply? So then the matrix and the operating system of Gaia is tuned in. And then, of course, they also seed, meaning that they program in, bringing in parts and pieces of programs from other planets to create what we call sentient beings, nature, and its operating system. And the same thing with humanity. Humanity is seeded, so it takes the bits and pieces of all the different species, and they take it and code it and so forth, and they create another physicality. Then there's an operating system of those physicalities. They say, okay, how does it actually work? How do we want it to work? So then that is worked into the mix. And again, it has to all align with the matrix and whatever else that was designed for planet Earth. So, but when we're looking at it, everything is within the source. The souls that are coming in, which is all of us that have souls that are in bodies and so forth, we choose to come and take a turn to play on this playground. Now, of course, there's many, many, many billions of souls that are scattered all over the place, as yourself have been on other planets or have been in non-form for a period of time or whatever, have chosen to be part of this operating system. So when you come into the operating system, you get to see what's here and available, what possibilities are there, what obstacles you may have, what intensities are there, and so forth. And then you decide, as the soul, are you going to embody it? As for the human entities, the same thing. It looks at it and says, okay, do I keep any parts of my older experience? Do I keep only part of it? Do I tap into other parts? Can I now embody a physicality? And the physicality is also coming from Gaia, saying, okay, what expression do we require? What frequency do we require to continue to advance? And then there's a beautiful combination that comes together. And of course, then, you know, the makeup of the physicality also has a computer, which is the mind, and that's how we go. So when we're talking about that, we're talking about beings that have reached a certain level, which you may have been involved. Like, for example, the retooling of planet Earth, there were a series of engineers, and I happened to be, not me, the soul, my soul, happened to be one of the programmers. But that soul actually came from that parallel Earth that already had much of the experience and had learned so much about how the operating system. So it says, okay, I'm going to be a contributor. I'm going to be part of this team. And there was a team that came together, all different ones from different experiences and so forth, and say, okay, how can we put this together so that we are creating this perfect playground on planet Earth for where it's required? Now, of course, you know, if you have missed it, I did explain, you know, that the programs, you know, the original retooling was 15,000 years ago, and then there was modifications 10,000, 5,000, 3,000, 1,500, and 300 years ago at different stages where it was retuned, but then there was another consciousness that was involved. So that you understand that we're all source, we're all existing within that sourceness. Nothing is outside at all. There's no possibility to do so because all existence is created within that field of consciousness and spectrum of light, because everything is really a holographic projection with a level of consciousness that continues to expand. Now, we're not here to just experience life. We are here to advance, to become more enlightened, to go even higher than the source essence that we are, because as we're doing that, essence grows, okay? And that's how it is. So, like I said, everybody's part of source, and everybody has the capacities to create and co-create as source does. And it's just the level of complexity and expansion that you create depends on the advancement of that particular soul with all the alignments that are creating. Now, we're always constantly creating. Nothing is outside of that creation, and you cannot not create, but you are creating. And I will explain a little further how that all comes about. But at this point in time, you're not outside of it in any way, shape, or form. Go ahead.
Okay, question. Cosmic Energy is asking, if everyone is to wake up in the next 3 years, what will happen with the millions imprisoned for crimes they did during the time of the inverted matrix?
Okay. Well, see, all of this stuff is still being sorted out. But in essence, can you bring that back up later? Okay. Because after I go through some of this, then you'll have a better understanding. Okay. But at the same time, we have to understand that everything is coming back into alignment. All of these polarization and the role playings that have been played actually dissolves. So in fact, the rigidity of particular roles that were played will change so that it is not played out the same way. Now, so as I go along, now I wanted to cover one thing. I know it came up last time and possibly the time before. I had talked about some splits that have occurred. First of all, we had the split where we have two platforms created, the organic 3D and organic 5D. There was, the operating system with the allowance of the different stages. But we've just experienced just recently, within a few weeks ago, and another activation just a few days ago, where another split, energetic consciousness split occurred. What does that mean? That means depending on the state that you're in or were in your operating system, you got pushed further into the depth of that state. What does that mean? That means that there's a divide in polarization. So you will notice that if you've already made such progress, you're going to feel your energy and everything else elevated even higher. And what that means is that you're accessing higher consciousness and your preference level is now much more discriminant with what you choose. You will also notice some people that have been playing a lower frequency that are very polarized and right, wrong, good, bad, whatever, and they're unconscious, actually got deeper into that. Okay. Now, the reason that accentuation and that polarization is so that the feel of that separation actually stimulates both sides. One, to actually feel that disconnect at the same time, but also feel the dissonance of the energies, but also the one is not carrying the other, and this one, say the higher is not depending on the lower, and the lower is not depending on the higher to kind of lift it up. So both become much more empowered within them, whatever state that they're in. And that's been accentuated, and that runs because the energies are increasing between the 23rd and the 29th of April, which we're in right now. Today, I think, is the 25th, right? So that will occur before the next phase of energy that comes in, which is the 1st of May. So that is the level of separation where there's a consciousness separation, and then there is a polarization of saying, if you're going to play with, the lower frequency, you're going to feel it much more intensity for you so that you can get that saturation point a little quicker without having that other part of it, how can I say, kind of propping you up so that you're in the depth of it. And the same thing with the higher, so that you're actually going up to a higher frequency and accessing a higher consciousness, so you become much more observant of how things, and then it also changes your preference and the directions that you're going. The purpose of that is to shift the freedom and growth a little faster. So these are all plugins and experiences that are going in. So I know there's different energy channels that come in that provide that intensity for us. But those are things that we've called in. There's alignments, because there are very many souls here on the planet that are very instrumental as conduits to bring in certain of those energies to create that powerful accentuation. So that's the extra level of split that we're talking about. Sometimes my mind stops there. Okay, so it was just an extra bonus part, because that way we can speed things up. Okay, now what I want you to let you know, especially what we're going to be talking about as we're going along today, and then whatever we need to carry over, because there's still a lot to cover and I don't want to make it too long, or else we'll be here for 5 or 6 hours. All that is being shared is not in support in any way or another to disempower you. It's not to create any fear. It is not to do in any way saying that, okay, I have to be in a certain state for me to move forward or anything of that nature. It's really, really, really putting you in the driver's seat, because a lot of times what happens, you know it. It's not outside of you. It's not like, oh, okay, this is all a surprise to me. It's not. The mind may think so because the ego mind is saying, well, no, 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 that's not the case. But really from inside, from that higher aspect of yourself that is also communicated with in your mind, which is basically what we're talking about is the right brain part of communication, which is the intuitive part that is connected to our soul, connected to our human entity, connected to our body, which is connected to Gaia and everything else, and all of that's coming up to the surface. So everything that I'm showing you is so that you can understand how it's set up, the game. So you're getting the inside scoop in a sense. But at the same time, many of us already know it. We're just bringing a broader spectrum of it so that you can actually see it and really use it to kind of make shifts within yourself so that you can align collectively, because we're doing all this collectively, going further. So it's nothing at all in any way or shape to, make you feel disempowered because, oh my God, all of this is happening and, what am I going to do and everything else. No, 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 no. We're going to look at it. We're going to have a deeper understanding of it. We're going to play with it. We're going to bring ourselves in that empowered state. And this is why it's been so important that I've talked about it already a few times now on self-empowerment. Because this shift is about self-empowerment. But self-empowerment is also self-governance, self-directing. It is also accessing our own levels of consciousness, but that self-empowerment is also bringing us in alignment of who we are and what we've come here to do. Because we all came here as a baseline to experience this game, to learn from the game, to advance through the game, to become more enlightened in the game. But a lot of us have come here to really provide a certain offering to be part of this advancement and growth and expansion that we are doing collectively. So some are like very powerful conduits, others are bringing other skill sets and so forth. So it's really bringing all of that to the surface. No. So what I wanted to say is that the information being shared is to level the playing field. It's not about someone or a group, like I was showing you within 2 days ago, on the last episode or part 2, that there was some groups, elites, and whatever else that were governing our experience. Yes, they played a role for that, but we're going to put that back so that you can see that that doesn't have power over you and you have the freedom to play with it. So, like I said, some of this information may not be new for you, but we're just looking at it from a different perspective. It's just really bringing ourselves more into that deeper clarification and that self-empowered. Because what happens is the information that is shared, the energies that are shared, us coming together as we're sharing it, we're triggering that knowing. We're triggering our own code operating system to kick in. So that we step from waiting for something to happen to being part of the changes. See, it's not about, oh, I'm waiting for certain individuals to take out, the control structures, or the fact that, we have to demonize and arrest them and kill them and beam them off somewhere else into another planet or anything of that nature. It's not about that. Whatever's exposing is kind of, that's part of the game? Okay. Now, how does that resonate for me? How do we want to support it? But it's not from a AI, ego, Satan code response. It's really looking at it from a higher perspective. And that's what we're doing. Okay. Now, so I was talking about the Lucifer operating system. And I say that as an operating system because it is. It's an operating system. It's a complete operating system. The same thing as we were talking about the human, and of course there's many, many operating systems, including matrices. So the human operating system I might as well put system on this one too. So they're just two very different systems, all within source field. When we're looking at the human operating system, which works in the organic matrix, because the organic matrix was specifically designed to maintain this current. And I say current because it does upgrade time to time. So our current, and when I say current, I'm not talking about right this moment, the current last series of designs, which was done 15,000 years ago, that we are still embodying. So that operating system has been in the organic, operates with the organic matrix, with the original design and operating system of Gaia and all the sentient beings that have come in. So this is the main operating system of the human experience. This operating system exists on other realms. This does not. This is actually for planet Earth, but it also has a lot of the encodements from other planets within it and within other humans. Other beings. So this has 12 different species. That's right. 12 different types of species blended when this operating system came about. So we took codes and actual operating systems from 12 different species and kept it connected in the DNAs so that it made up this operating system. This operating system was created within the field to create an extreme separation, extreme polarity. So what does this do? It actually created an operating system that did not see itself as part of Source, but a competition to Source. Now, was this an evil thing, which a lot of people would like to call it? No, it's not. It's a very elaborate program that operates in a very low frequency, very low consciousness, very low spectrum of light, even though it's all part of it. This operating system can be turned off very easily, and it's not for us to do it, but the overseers, which are aspects of ourselves, and some may be involved in it. Even Source itself could say, okay, we're no longer operating it. Now, Source itself does not have a form. It is formless, but formful, because every one of us that are in form, which is still a holographic projection, is all part of Sourceness. So when this was put into place, was to really accentuate the separation, was accentuate disconnect from Source, even though that's not possible, but it created that. So the main operating system, as I talked about, was to dominate, to control, to limit, to create such a density where you really don't get to use any of your consciousness. It's pretty well turned off. So this, applied on planet Earth, was basically the inverted matrix, which made everything look backwards. Now that matrix was designed very much so because the inverted was to not evolve but devolve. And I've talked about that. But in essence, the inverted matrix, which was to produce what we call the inverted 3D and 2D, was very successful in doing that. And this, of course, the organic, we started off at 3D with the capacity up to 9D. So now that we understand it, this was plugged in. Now, for this operating system to really work in this operating system within our mind, then another operating system had to be created, or software, basically, within the mind, which, we call the ego, AI, and the real name is Satan. Now, I'm not talking about the religious version of the idea. We're just talking about a software. It's just a name, okay? This software, basically, what does it do? It creates polarity, separation, disconnect, all of that stuff, so that all of this stuff can be worked more powerfully, okay? So just to understand, it's all within Source. All of it is in the operating system, okay? And there's a lot of relationship to that. Now, when you adopt that particular operating system in any construct, it requires certain modification. For example, and I know I did cover some of this, so I'm just going to gloss over it. When we're talking about when a particular species, like in this case, reptilians, a group decided we're going to take that operating system and we're going to apply it. But to do that, we had to modify, they had to rewrite and create a hybrid version of it, which, were called Draconians and Anunnakis or whatever. But created a hybrid version so that that operating system could be installed and it would work, because if it wasn't, the main operating system would still be much more powerful. And that's how the whole Luciferian idea came in, because of the fact that once you adopted it and all the various species, because there are more species than the two I mentioned that have taken that on to go out and play. And it's really about, changing the scape. But at the same time, when you look at the main reason it was allowed to come into play was so that we created much more of a challenging experience so that we would be able to move through it. So this, when it was offered 10,000 years ago in our operating system, there was no agreement to make a hybrid. So there was no hybrid created. So this operating system was not plugged in. Instead, what was created was a software, secondary software, that, and this is not really so much an operating system because it operates on this system, but it's a piggyback software that you would call like a virus, but really not in the same sense, with the capacity to take over. So this operating system allowed the human system to have this as part of an overlay, which basically is construct of that, but it's not this operating system. So the operating system was not adopted or plugged in. However, to maintain it and to make it actually work, several things had to come in, and I'm not going to repeat it, regarding the moon, the information and so forth. But there had to be some other humanoids or humans that needed to be used as an opportunity to plug that in to support that system, because this standalone wasn't powerful enough, especially with the advancements of codes that were in there. So at that point, what occurred was that selected humans came about and they were modified and they became hybrids. So now what happens is you've taken a human in its human operating system and now created, blended it with codes and created a hybrid, another level of hybrid. Okay, so that hybrid would be able to have part of its operating system from here. So there are humans that are hybrids that exist in a lot of higher places that we don't even know about that had that operating system, but they have both running. So it's really both, but this overshadows one specifically now that or what we've been playing for a period of time. So this is how that came to place. So there are beings or humans that are hybrids, and they are in different positions that carry that. Now the original beings that were involved, they were coming and going on the planet a lot, and actually doing the different levels of upgrade without repeating what I said in the last part, was that, part 2, was that it kept coming in, are no longer involved. Okay, so they're out of the equation. And a lot of all the systems that were put in place were turned off, giving the opportunity for the more integral part of the human operating system to start to flourish in these hybrids, but also at the same time for ourselves. And then I'm going to show you where all of this stuff is plugged in within us as an operating system. The reason I said about the hybrid, because they are playing a role to pursue this. So the power of dominance, one world government, and controlling every facet of it and making everything reinforce as the inverted matrix, so that if you look at it right now, everything that is actually the truth is somehow stifled or shown as false, or you could see that, because this operating system said, we're not going to show it to you. We have to show it to you, but we're not going to be that, we're going to show you the opposite, so that you can actually get to that self-empowered state. Because there is still, a certain level of consciousness within there saying, we're not here to just destroy it, even though that was the case. And I did talk about the different, because this is the fourth time planet Earth gets introduced this operating system. So each time it comes in after. It's not like it was plugged into it originally. But each time it's been offered, we have to. So as long as we demonize any part of this experience, basically we're given a power. We're just saying it has power over us. So if we demonize any one of the different roles, it has power over us. It changes the way our focus goes. So it's really, really important of that. So this particular codes that we have, and I've always talked about the ego, if you pay attention within yourself, it's the part that creates fear. It's the part that creates, saying, this is uncomfortable, that's uncomfortable, this is how it's done, that's not how it's done. It's all of that stuff. It's always that extra dialogue that actually creates that disconnect from ourselves, because it really, and I'll cover more of it, how it actually works, so not to repeat all of that. So anyways, in regards to these hybrids that exist, how did they get into power? Well, that was the purpose, because for them to override, we had to create an illusion that they were superior. And that was convinced because they worked together to make sure the smoke and mirrors type of thing, meaning that we're going to project this idea. But the thing is, we had to be in a state where we say, okay, yeah, they're the authority, and that's how they get into power, because we've agreed to accept it. Even though they presented it, it was still up to us to say, do I have them run over my operating system? Do I have them go and dictate how my life is going to be or not? It's a choice that we make, and we're still making it today. Because look at it, we're exposed to different sources of information, but I'm going to get to the detail how all that came about. The information that we're having, the different streams of input, we're choosing each moment. And I know some of it may seem like we're not choosing consciously, and that's true, but in a way we are choosing where do we put our attention, where do we put our focus, where do we put our power. Do I give my power, when I say give my power, giving my opportunity for that cluster to dictate how I shape my life? And you can see that all over the world right now. If you're going through this experience, which they call lockdown, whatever it is, self-containment, self-quarantined, and so forth, that it's just offered as an idea, and with these so-called authorities, which we kind of give power to the authorities, because we agree to it, here we are playing the game. That's just a small part of it, but it's a very big part at the same time playing out. And there's a reason for that, and I know I alluded to it many times, but at the same time, we have to understand that it's actually there for us to assist within our own connection. Okay, so then you're looking at it, and you say, okay, we've given power to these control structures because they come in and say, well, we're the authorities. We're the ones that are going to tell you how to run because we are rulers. We are this, we are that, or we're the chosen people, or we're whatever. Now, that's all part of the operating system within here. But then all of us choose to follow only because this operating system says, yeah, there's a hierarchy. That operating says, they're better than us. We're not that good. We're not that powerful. We're not that bright. We're not privileged. That's what the operating system says. And the operating system, we need to comply. We need to support, because if we don't, then everything will fall apart and so forth. So that operating system complies. And that's what has taken us very deeply into this, because of that operating system, or not even an operating, that software, basically. Because the operating system is us, the computer that's within us, who we are. Okay, so then the question comes up. The ones that are in place, what we call the hybrids, hybrid humans, that are, the so-called authority, are they equipped to be able to really be part of this upgrade that we're going through? They may be playing a role of the polarity, but the freedom and the observation we need to make is that, do I let them, whoever the them are, and many of us know, the ones that are playing in certain roles, do I let them tell me how to live my life, how to shape my reality, how to shape our world construct and experience? Are they qualified? Are they in alignment with consciousness and so forth? As you observe, if you're actually watching news feeds and various other levels of communication that is happening right now, it's very, very obvious. They're making it so clear. Hey, open your eyes. We're playing like bumbling idiots. And not to say any of that as, in a judgment performance. It's like, we're showing you we don't know what we're doing. They do know what they're doing, but they have to make it known so that we say, wait a minute, I'm giving authority to these role players so that you can actually pull that role playing, the power you've given, or the authority you've given to the role players that are dictating, and saying, okay, look at it. I'm taking it back. I'm going to decide how to do this. And that's when we're doing it in masses right now. We're doing more and more people. So look at even what's going on right now with the quarantine thing and whatever else. It's so illogical, because what's beneficial for us to be outside, to be in the sun, to be, in the fresh air, to be able to walk and do whatever, even if we're not going into the regular world, is say no. Now, of course, some of that is just starting to change right now, and certain parts of the world didn't adopt it at all, or very little. But it's saying, hey, look at what we're saying, look at what we're doing. By the way, we're coming up with a solution, But, so it's making it so obvious. And then when you look at them, how they're playing the game, you're going, whoa, that's very interesting observation. And I'm putting my attention and power in that. Now, there's a flip side to that. Of course, you don't want to look at it and say, oh, look at those idiots, because then you're basically now still supporting polarization, and you're judging and demonizing, or just, basically say, no, you say, okay, they are not equipped at this point, because they're making it obvious. They're telling us, we don't want to run your life, even though the operating system, we were going to run your life, but they're backing off now. Say, hey, please open your eyes. But you don't want to go into the demonizing part. You don't want to get into the part of saying, oh, by the way, we're the bad people, whatever it is. And that's the thing. So we have to understand that all the different systems that exist, operating systems, and when I'm talking about operating systems, we're talking about governmental systems, we're talking religious systems, we're talking about financial systems, medical system, educational system, different systems that govern and police and whatever other levels of systems that exist, even operating systems of how things are distributed and owned and whatever else, are all run by the same operating system that was projecting this and making it very clear that it's time to move over. So, right now what we're doing and what we are seeing is that our eyes are opening to see it, but not to demonize any part of it. Is coming to the realization that, hey, we need to come back into our driver's seat. Okay? And that's what we're doing. Now, as long as you are, and this is why I'm going to do one episode on ego anyways, shortly, probably next week or something, or the week after, I mean. As long as we are run by the ego, okay, then this operating system that correlates with this operating system is active, because this operates from that. This requires this to work within us. So just so you understand. So the thing is, do not demonize this operating system. Appreciate it, be okay with it, but slowly unplug it. Because, and I'll get deeper into it later in another episode, but this operating system uses experiences and labels them and creates all of the different storylines within it. So that's the thing. This operating system right now, just so that you know, right now, as things are going, is very unstable, because the tools that it required to keep it stable have been removed. So the projection of the inverted matrix, the satellite transmission that was coming from the moon, unplugged. The beings that were actually coming here, that were so-called the Luciferians, that were coming here and keeping integral operating system of this, and human hybrids working with them, are no longer participating. That's the first part. The second part, the energies that are streaming right now from our own sun, the galactic sun, from Gaia, from all these portals that are being opened up, channels coming from different channel points or energy points from within the galaxy and within the universe. These frequencies are also altering our operating system and our consciousness advancing, and the fact that now we have been put on two platforms that support organic 3D and organic 5D is making it so unstable, and it's becoming less and less capable of maintaining its functionality. Okay? So this process that we're going through right now, and every time we get these pulses, and even what we call the Schumann resonance, is really destabilizing this operating system within the hybrids, and also the operating system, or what we can call the software that is the ego. Plus the ego is not really getting any support from any of this, because it's not there anymore. So now what is it going to do? It's going to try to play with other egos to kind of keep, like friends, and say, hey, listen, I'm not supported anymore. Hey, let's play together. Let's see if we can keep this integral here. We does not lose what our job is. So now that we're looking at that, we're going to go through certain things. I'm going to point out various things as we go along now. Now that we've reestablished the baseline and a little bit more understanding, we're going to look at how all of this is infiltrated so that we can actually make choices of where we put our power. So the first thing we have to understand, that all media currently, except for certain other stuff that's stepping out of it, that seems to be unplugged off the internet and being projected as fake news or whatever it is, and there is fake news. I'm not saying there isn't. The beautiful part about it is that most of the fake news is from the mainstream, right? Because, again, the mainstream, I'm not saying that they're doing something devious, they're just showing us that we're going to show you that as insane as possible, if you want to use those words, because I can't think of a better word at the moment, so that you can actually go, does this even resonate for me? So when we're looking at media, the media itself has all been constructed. That means the music, the movies, the shows, the all types of resources and so forth that are being streamed have been encoded to be able to still project this. Even the hypnotic state that we have because of the way it's to support it. Okay? So you will notice as you're going into more awakening state, and if you can unplug a little bit longer, you will find that you will notice the preference of focusing on what is being shown. Because if you look at the media, most of it is to do with major polarization. Right, wrong, good, bad. It's a lot of violence. It's a lot of abuse of one another. It's showing, and now there's like almost guns in every single thing that's out there, and then every other news is trying to scare the crap out of you because it's basically designed in that, because if we can keep you under control. Now the thing is, it gave up to control us. It's more playing the role to let you see that kind of state that you went in is something that you need to pay attention and shift out of. And this is why we're noticing that we're pulling away not only from the mainstream stuff, we're pulling away from some of the systems and not even putting focus on there and connecting with ourselves, because we're changing, and we're also noticing that it's becoming more intensified. And when we're looking at it, going, oh my God, that really hits you in the face sort of thing, that it doesn't match with you. And this is what we're noticing. So, I mean, I know I've had this experience myself for many, many decades now, where, just sitting and watching a certain thing with certain levels of violence or whatever it is, I couldn't do it. And even some of the advertising, whatever else is going on, it's just kind of so out there in the sense of saying that is not a reflection of who we are. And for us to focus on that would just kind of reinforce the old operating system. But as you're going through these processes and experiences that you're having personally and noticing it, we're shifting away from one part or another because it doesn't resonate. Now it's mesmerizing and it's very alluring to watch, or to put a lot of power into those types of media, because there's lots of different medias that are going out there. The other thing is you have to also, this is just to pay attention, is a lot of the religion, what can I call it? Religious orders and religious systems. A lot of them are getting challenged. A lot of them are, people are stepping out of it and so forth. And now could get a little deeper. But if you're looking at it, they were all constructed from this operating system. In fact, the whole underlining and a lot of the top leaders and so forth are part of the hybrid humans. Now, as much as we're going there, and I'm going to cover some more because the things I want to cover, I'm just going to touch bases as we're going along. We're going to notice that a shift happens as you're shifting and the energy is shifting, so that we step away from it, because we're not giving ourselves to the point where, something, I cannot be myself if I'm following a certain, I don't know if you want to call it system, but a certain religion, for example. Just call it that. Because they're telling me how to live. They're telling me how to think. Now, of course, somebody says, well, there's ethics in there. Yes, but how much of the ethics is actually free and so forth, where there's no judgment? There is no categorizing. Because the thing is, if you're not free spirit to think for yourself and just really truly decide, which you do, but if you follow it to one T, it's like, no, this is how it's done. And this is what we need to follow. And this is expected of you. And this is, and even the code of ethics is actually, in many of them, quite reversed, in the sense where, there's a dominance or this or that, whatever it is. So just so you understand, I'm not demonizing anything here. I'm just pointing it out so that you can actually observe. because it's infiltrated in all levels. Because once we understand it, okay, the whole idea that there are deities is part of the operating system. There's a tier saying, okay, there's deities. You got to respect these deities. You got to praise these deities. You have to, these deities are have rules and you have to follow. These deities and so forth are demanding. These deities, are our creators, or that, we follow under their rules. Their rules and so forth, right? So all of this stuff, because when we're looking at it, we're really all source. We're all what people call God, okay? We're all in that field. We're all that creation. It's not, and none of it is outside of it in any way, shape, or form. Now, a lot of the deities that are projected were fictional, saying, okay, that stands, but it's a cluster within the operating system that, okay, we're gonna create this fictional part. Now, some were different individuals that actually took on the roles of hybrids or whatever it was, and that have taken the leadership. Others were other beings that were coming in that were, say, Luciferians or whatever else, that actually came in and put on all these rules and so forth as a baseline. So if we're looking at it, at different times, they applied different rules to follow, different expectations and so forth, based on where we were at. So if you look at it, at the time, and the way it still exists, if you look at it without actually seeing it, how it's shifting, a lot of these deities were projecting wars amongst each other. Who was accepted and who's not? Who's enemies? This is the enemy of God. And one God's better than the next God. And there was a lot of effort and energy put into the fact, if you read some of the older scriptures, how to abuse one another, or how to dictate one another, how you had authority over one another, or how this particular deity expected you to live your life. A lot of it focused on fear, afraid that you would have some negative consequences, or that if you didn't follow the rules, or the fact that you did not do what the instructions were, whatever that may have been. Though there was also the whole idea you got to praise, because if you don't, then it will not look after you, or it will not be happy with you, or anything of that nature. If you think outside of what is being said, that is taboo, that is sinful, or that is, I can't even think of another word for it. I have it in my mind, I can't use it because it doesn't come to me. But in the fact, if you don't follow those rules, we're actually breaking trust and so forth, and we're going to pay the consequences. Or if we follow the rules by killing certain people, then we get rewarded and so forth. So you could see that, is it looking after oneness, or is it projecting separation? Is it projecting disempowered? Because it's basically saying, you have no power. I tell you what power I have, or that you have. And I tell you what to live. You're just pawns. I've created you. You got to follow my rules. And then there is, again, like I said, the separation. Who's acceptable, who's not acceptable, who we demonize, who we bring in, and so forth. And you're creating pockets of groups, fighting against other groups, or judging other groups, or anything of that nature. Those are all indicators that it's operated from this operating system. Those are the indicators. I am not here to blasphemy, or whatever people like to call it. I was going to make a new word, but I can't say it right. So you have freedom to believe and give power to whatever you want, but you're going to notice that a lot of things are shifting within yourself, and your focus starts to shift too. So you start to come to the realization. The next part of it, so that we understand that many people, as you're going through stages of awareness, break out of those clusters, because each of those clusters, like I'm talking about religion, create a confine. You have to live within here. You got to live within those constructs. You don't go outside the box. You don't go outside of whatever, that cluster. It's herd mentality, but herd limited mentality. But as we're coming out, getting more aware, we break out of it. Now, sometimes this kicks in very powerfully and kind of scares you to stay back in there, and a lot of us have for a long time as collective, but we're breaking out of that. The other thing I wanted to mention, the whole idea of human destruction, Armageddon, the coming back of some deity or deities and wiping us out and only keeping the good ones or anything of that nature, it's all in this operating system. It's just to scare and to create dominance over you as an illusion. And a lot of the hybrids are saying, we need a one world government, one world religion, one world monetary system, one world whatever, all of this stuff. Okay? All of that is basically in this operating system, so that we could see it much more powerful and break out of it. Now, of course, we stayed in the depth of it for a very long time. The other thing, there's so much concern with the destruction, also with what we can call climate change and all of that stuff. Okay? We can give power to whatever you want to give power to. Okay? I'm not saying that, our old method of doing things and using old technologies and keeping everything rigid, which was still part of this whole control structure, like we're talking about that group here with all the levels here, saying, but look at it this way. What we're noticing is this true? Or is it that we're going through stages, but we need to focus our attention on something else? It's not about the world's going to go into a bad state because it's warming up or because it's cooling down, because it's doing both. It goes up and down, there's all of that stuff. And that we have CO and not and all of those levels. That's not the issue. The issue is, look at what happened right now. Everything is kind of slowed down. The air's clearing up, the water's cleaning up, and so forth. Yes, we are polluting, absolutely. Is it affecting the environment? Yes, it is. It's affecting us more. And the environment, of course, doesn't take long to clean itself up, but we're not also here to continue playing that old game. So realistically, if any of these hybrids and groups and different levels here on the upper tiers actually said, hey, we got an issue here. We're not going to go and put more toxin in the air by spraying the skies and whatever else. We're not going to do that. We're going to look at what is the culprit here. Oh yeah, we're using fossil fuels. And we're not only using fossil fuels, we're also using a lot of things that are not necessary for us to use. We have so much infrastructure here to control and whatever else that is not beneficial. So let's focus on creating a better environment. How do we create better environment? We're going to look at cleaner resources and eliminating a lot of the resources and fine-tune it so that we don't have to maintain all the systems that we have in place, because a lot of the systems are not necessary because they're still playing the old game. So we'll look at that and say, okay, how can we clean up? How can we change some of the things that we do, the focus and everything else? That would be when we're saying, okay, we're working collaboratively to change something. But no, it's like, okay, we're just going to give you credits and you're going to pay more taxes or whatever it is. And again, that's another game. But at the same time, say, okay, we're going to keep everything status quo. We're not going to allow any changes because, and just apply more restrictions. But these are cues to us and saying, what are we talking about? What are we looking at? Why is it every time a technology comes in and gets stifled? Why every person that discovers something new gets killed or gets banished or whatever it is? What's the thing behind it? Is it all of this? This is what we're realizing. The whole idea is when we created this whole, when this operating system was applied, it was in a way to feel that it had to run us to the point it would diminish our capacities to function as high evolving beings. Why do you think the inverted matrix was put in? Why did the inverted 3D and 2D come in? Which is opposite to higher dimensional consciousness, evolution. Because to stay integral, you have to lower your vibration. You have to go deeper into that state where you're not realizing that we are in charge of how we create our reality. It's just a matter of understanding all of that. And that's what we're looking at. So I'm just sharing certain things because a lot of us have been sensing that, feeling it, and so forth. Now, the whole, what we call the media and everything else, if you look at the governmental system, the educational system, the medical system, all the different other systems that are in there, financial and so forth, have been conditioning us through the idea that life is shaped that way. And I'm going to talk about it as we go along, and hopefully we'll have time today. If not, we'll pick up the pieces on Tuesday. To shape and to kind of govern ourselves to say, this is how it is, following those rules. To add to the mix, okay, we allow what we call certain substances and addictions to be plugged into our operating system, which lowers our frequency. Like fear, hatred, anger, survival, victimhood, judgment is used to keep our consciousness at bay and our frequency lower. So we get to that saturation point and change. If you look at it, what's part of the operating system too? Abuse, terror, taking advantage of others, using a monetary system as a way to operate, a way to make decisions, a way to decide if we're plug something in or not, a way to keep us stuck on so busy surviving that we can't see anything bigger or better or stepping into it. But this is all encoded in here. The illusion that we're not good enough and we have to earn it. Not good enough, or that we have to somehow create all of this stuff. That's all in the operating system, which comes from this operating system that's always been creating those separations. So you got to pay attention to it. If you notice that you have some of this playing out within you, you say, oh, okay. And not to say, oh my God, this is happening to me. It's like, oh, this is interesting. Now I'm going to put some more attention on this so I can ease myself out of these operating systems, out of the power that it's been given to it, which I've given personally, everybody has done to your degree for yourself, and start bringing in and say, how much power did I give to my ego? How much power to these rules, programs, and so forth? Because you have to understand that everything that we're exposed to and all the systems are the fuel to keep this program still alive. But just to understand, we're basically purging that out of our system. And we're purging this part of it out of our system. So as much as it's still coming very powerfully within our consciousness and in our attention span and focus, that it's really just giving us to the point where we're saying, okay, let's step out of it. Let's finish with this because we're done. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. Some of the other things to notice is that the whole survival thing, haves and have-nots, is necessary to keep the system intact. Because if we're busy surviving, we're using most of this operating system, and we're not really putting that much attention in what we call the organic 3D or 5D part. It's like distraction. If we have to create the survival mode, and this is why you have in the world Examples. There's countries that are in complete poverty. There's countries that have a mix of poverty and wealth and whatever else. That is still part of all this operating system, because really when you're bringing in the whole oneness component into the play, then that's not functional. So the whole thing about survival is a program distraction. But we come to the point where we say, okay, we're not going to do that. How do we create something, an environment, an operating system, and so forth, that we flourish? You were going to say something?
Yes, Brian is asking, excuse me, will any government structure resembling what we have now be in place during the transition into and during the first stages of 5D? And if so, will it be renamed, or will it run under the pretense of the current titles within the Luciferian system?
I don't know if I understood that
Okay,
totally.
so as we transition into 5D,
Right.
are we going to be maintaining the kind of a similar governmental structure that we have now?
No. As we're going through the transition, right now we're readjusting. So new players will come in. A lot of the players that have played the very Luciferian operating system and within the ego, what we call the Satan codes, will become even more apparent. And we've already noticed that. We've noticed a lot of the ones that are in leadership in the government levels, that they're standing out, that they're not there for our highest good. They're saying, hey, we're not. We're under this operating system, and really spot us so that we can be taken out of the equation, meaning that I don't have to play that role any longer. So as we're going through the transition in the next several years, because there's different stages of transition. The first stage, or this is one of the many stages we've already gone through, but the stage that we're going through now, which is a 3-year period that we've already started, and we're already into the fifth, almost 5, no, is it? 4, 5, 4? 4 months. Yeah, 4 months into the 3 years. Yeah, because we're almost done, so we're 4 months. Okay, so within that part, how can I say it? I just had it in my mind how I was going to say. So the first stage within the first 3 years is basically purging the inverted matrix in 2D and 3D from this operating system. Okay, this is already happening, but it's being reinforced for us to do that. So you will notice that the governmental structures will start to change. New leadership. And again, do we need leaders? At the time being, the way we're going, there will be some more conscious leaders stepping in at different levels of consciousness. Now, each one plays a different role, because some of them will destabilize the system and expose the system so that we actually can now be more selective on what is brought in. And the role players that have played a very powerful operating system under the human hybrids from this elite group, they're being exposed, as you can see it. Now, we don't want to go into the same position as others have taken on and demonizing them, and they're the trouble of our lives and so forth. No, they played the role, and yes, they're done with the role. We're going to say, okay, you're done with the role. Now you need to step out of the way. What steps do we need to take to get you to leave, to get you to finish that part of it? So the governmental structures and a lot of all these structures, including the financial structures and so forth, and educational structures, is already going through a restructuring. It's already going through a different level of exposure, okay? Because if you look at it, the current, and up to just recently, was 100% operated within this operating system. Okay. Now you're noticing there's certain change. All of a sudden now there's allowances being made for supporting people. The financial system and so forth, the same thing. Because when we're looking at even the financial system, we're saying, okay, we're going through a reset. We're really going through a readjustment and redesigning the whole thing. Because you have to understand that the whole monetary system and all of these different levels of governments and all the tiers that are there, have just been plugged in just to keep distractions and to keep a lot of red tape to slow things down so this agenda can continue to play. But now you're noticing that all of it was made up along the way and that we actually don't have to. So this whole idea that, we're going to go to a currency which is gold backed or any type of metal backed or whatever it is just another observation saying, okay, well, we need to do this because we're on. But the thing is, all of it is basically all constructs. Okay, it doesn't have to be backed with anything, and it doesn't have to be the way it is now either, because there are small groups, certain bankers, certain which are operating with these systems, that are in charge of what is allowed and not allowed, who has, who doesn't have, how it flows, whatever it is. So part of the transition going into the full organic 3D and then organic 5D, a lot of that will change. So you'll notice even this year, the way a lot the governmental system is working and also the monetary system, the educational system and so forth are going to continue to change along the way. Now we're going to be offered the polarity part, like you're going to have certain individuals coming in and say, oh, we can't do anything unless we have these injections put into us or whatever it is. That's an offering for us to say, wait a minute, I'm going into self-empowerment here. I say no. We're not complying. We're not participating. We're not supporting it, right? But there's a difference, and I'm going to cover that again later. But the whole point, there's two ways to say no. No, because I have an issue with it. No, because I'm afraid of it. No, because in some way I'm going to feel violated. That's one level of no. The second level of no is, no, I'm done. No way. If you saw the movie The Matrix, the first one, near the end, after Neo got shot, Neo got shot, he gets back up, right? And that's, you have to understand the Matrix had a lot of how the operating system actually does work. Because even the agents and whatever else were basically all within this construct of operating system within these tiers. I'm not saying that there was stuff that wasn't off, but in essence, the basic fundamentals were exactly how it worked. And it was to stop consciousness, really, what's going on. But when Neo got up, and this time he was not going to do what he was doing before, because before he fought. Before, at that point in time, it was just me against them. Okay? And he had to defeat the system. And that's how we get caught up in the no. I got to fight the system or it's going to kill me. But when he did get up after he got shot, this time he says, I'm not playing at that game anymore. And when he said no, the bullet stopped. That meant that no matter what was fed, what was pushed towards you, you're not supporting it. It's like, no. And then the thing is, which was really instrumental too, is that when the bullet stopped, he looked at it and go, oh, I have the choice. What do I want to do with this? It actually has no power. And then they all fell. Because the thing is, this part of it is saying, hey, wait a minute. We decide what to do. Doesn't matter what this is deciding. This part is saying, hey, get to it, guys. Figure it out. We're not holding this anymore for you. But we're going to keep spitting it at you until you get it. Okay? So you will notice that we're going, wait a minute, huh? Okay, we have a group or groups deciding how the money is distributed, who gets it, who doesn't get it, that there's a restriction to it. Meanwhile, they're pumping out as much as possible and they come out of thin air and whatever. And now we want to bring it back and now tie it into a resource. Again, it's all restriction. So the thing is, a bridging would be, okay, let's create the financial resources so that everybody has a basic fundamental part of it, and then anything additional will be done through something creative. That's the transitional part. Eventually, as we get into, which probably be in 2040, so it's still another 20 years away, but it can happen even by 2030, 35, somewhere around there, where you're going to notice it becomes out of the equation, the whole idea that we have to have these currencies, because this was a plug-in. And if anybody says currency is a requirement, it's still part of the old operating system that's saying that that's the case. because currency is not required. And when they say, well, currency is required so that people do certain things, people are not naturally don't want to do things. People want to do things. People want to do what they feel guided to do. They want to do something that aligns. It's a gift that they have, a skill that they're bringing in, but not a slavery part or the fact that, I have to do this to earn a living or something of that nature, and all this other stuff with ownership and whatever else. Because again, ownership is very deep into this operating system, because what does it say? We want ownership of planets. We want ownership of whatever few people that I want on the planet as slaves or whatever else. That's all part of the operating system to push to the max, right? Now you have to understand this operating system has an intelligence behind it, but that operating system also at the same time is blindsided too, because it gets lost in its own operating game, okay? So the whole survival thing is what keeps a lot of this in place, because of the fear that if we don't have this, that we will stop existing or that things will fall apart. That's all projected within this operating system. We got to take care of you. We got to provide you all of this stuff because you can't do it alone. If we don't protect you, if we don't tell you how to do things, you can't do it. This is kind of what is projected, so that we get to the point of saying, no, that way, that's not how it works. Let's come together and let's create something that's much more viable to where we're going. The other thing you'll notice, if you play, and I may have mentioned it the last time in the last part, that you'll notice that the most of the so-called lower frequency activities and reactions and role-playing that happens is at the lowest setting of the sun. That means at night. That means at times when the sun exposure is very low. Now, before we had also the stimulation within the moon, where it was more powerful in what it was transmitting and less influential by the negating of the energies of the sun at the time. So because these operating systems operate at a very lower frequency, that you will notice the level of violence, the level of abuse, the level of everything that was polarized became much more accentuated. Some of the groups that were involved in certain rituals and whatever else was always done during the lower setting of the sun or lower exposure of the sun. Okay? For the very reason, because the sun's frequency would not keep that operating system very powerful, because it was actually negating or reducing its capacities. So this is why you see things elevating at night. You were going to say something?
Yeah, this is about the stages. Isabel is asking, so the first stage is removal of 2D in the inverted 3D matrix, and it will take 3 years. Which are the other stages, and how long will each last? Are the other stages as short as this 3-year one?
Okay, I've covered it, but I'm just going to go through it very quickly. So the stage that we are in now, first of all, there's several stages here that's gone on. Okay, 2020 is stage 3, because the first stage was 87 up to 2012. The second stage was 2012 up to the end of 2019, and now we're in stage 3 of 2020. So this final stage that came in, there was various sequence that was put in, and that is that we had up to the 2022, the completion of 2022, before going into 2023 to purge all of this. The next stage was that we would go, by purging this, then we would be more fully in organic 3D and 5D, okay? So that we start to integrate and experience the 3D and 5D part. That other stage is 15 years, but the 15 years started already. So that means that there will be another 12 years left as maximum. These are maximums. These are cutoff points. It can happen a lot faster. But the cutoff point was by 2035, which is a 15-year period starting in 2020, that we would be fully done with the organic 3D. We're not talking about the 2D and inverted 3D. We would be done with the organic 3D, with the organic matrix, so that the organic 3D and 5D would merge and become one. So then there's another 5 years of integration time so that every player is fully 100% organic 5D and beyond. Okay, so that's the next stage. So the intent, fully intent and collective intent, and also our galactic brother intent that are working very close to us without removing any of the experiences that we have, is to have us fully integrated into organic 5D. That means that we are fully aligned. And then if the creations will be very 5D and then 6D and 7D, because we have the opportunity to go up to 12, really up to 11. But we can go to 12, but then the planet changes considerably. But that may not happen in our life stream. Now, our life stream, of course, are being reprogrammed with ourselves, especially with the 12 DNA strands as they start to reactivate. That our lifespan as a physical operating system, because the souls are immortal, so is your human entity is immortal in a sense, it merges, and Gaia is part of the immortality, but the actual projection of what looks like a form, or that spectrum of holographic projection, will go from the shorter version that we have now to 1,000 years. Now that will happen along the way, and so forth. So in that respect, you were going to say something?
Yeah. Arlene is asking why I can't find anyone who understands this transition except online.
You're talking about like people? Other
Yeah, I
people
think
that you
people. I
communicate with?
think too. Some people are afraid to talk about it.
Well, there's people that are afraid to talk about it. And I mean, the thing is, the reason you're seeing it online, because they're scattered all over the place. There are certain individuals that are getting more on track on that. But a lot of times, we're surrounded by a lot of people that don't get it at all. I mean, besides the people that have followed my work or I've interacted with what I share, if I look at my whole family dynamics, absolutely nothing there. Older friendships that existed, nothing there. Nothing's reflective. So in essence, I do experience my own knowing, and I'm sharing it from bringing in, my soul is bringing all this stuff in from that other alternate planet Earth with alternate humanoid programming operating system that is very much higher dimensions that is bringing in and was involved with all of this. Yeah, okay, so I have my own source, and I've had that source for, and we all have that source within ourselves, but it depends on the degree that we're going. So you may be surrounded by a lot of people that are not there yet, so you're looking for it online because you're connecting with various people all over the world. The online stuff has brought a lot of people together because even when I was doing stuff live in person for quite a numerous amount of years, the amount of information that was shared was minimal to compare to what I share now, because people weren't open to the idea. So they wanted just little bits of it. So that's what I was sharing, is the little bits of it that helped them to the next little step. Eventually what happens is your vibration becomes more. So the online stuff exposure is actually triggering the reminding memory of you, of who you are, and your energies increase, your access points of consciousness increases. Then what you transmit actually creates an adjustment so that certain individuals that do not relate or vibrate your frequency or your consciousness will maybe less and less into your attention or no longer in your attention, and then others will come along. Now there are people around the different parts of the world that are meeting people, are getting together groups, maybe not right now, but I'm saying have been getting together with other people that have. But like I can give you a 62-year viewpoint because I was aware from it from the beginning. What we have exposure now and the amount of people that are getting more aware of this stuff is hugely exponentially than anything that was available over the last several decades. Okay, so there's like an explosion of people now getting this awareness, and of course energetically and everything else that we've gone through and going through is bringing more people online, sort of thing, online within ourselves, and then online, of course, connecting with other people. So that's what I can say. Is there anything you wanted to share around that from your perspective and
I
viewpoint?
think what happens too is as you open up more, you'll draw people to you when you're ready to have them come into your life
Hmm.
for whatever reason. So, yeah, that's my experience. I didn't have anybody around me until, except for my parents, really.
But
And
then there was a certain range that they had access
yeah,
to, as
exactly. And
understanding, right?
then it wasn't till you and I met that then that opened up more. But so I think as we move forward in our own personal journey, then the people show up that we need to have contact with that will help further our journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the thing. Just to give you a little insight of my journey is that, I started talking about this stuff 35 years ago. Even though I started as a kid, but at that point in time, it was just like, you know, plant a seed here. I wasn't going out teaching or or communicating with other people in that way, but it was anybody that was interacting, throw a bit here and a bit there, which, there was a lot of resistance to it. But even the ones that started following when I became a little bit more public, and when I say public, meaning that I was holding smaller groups and so forth, I wasn't doing the online stuff. You know, some of the online stuff started in 2010, but that online stuff was just basically live streamed workshops that we were doing with Masterpiece Life, and then some of the interviews and whatever else that was going on. But even that, you'll notice people came in and came out. This is what I noticed, is that some of the ones that were coming to some of the talks I was having and whatever else at different points in time, some continued to grow, but a lot of them just stepped away. They got what they needed when they were there, and they moved, and they either went to do their own thing, or the fact that they weren't ready for the rest of it, because the message kept evolving, it kept expanding, and so forth. So you're going to notice you have to be fluid about people coming and going into your life, and having certain people coming. And that's the way I look at it. I mean, I've had people that were totally against anything I said 20 years ago, and then all of a sudden they're totally on board with it. Others that were on board, then all of a sudden I was the demon because I broke their bubble, or whatever it is, because I'm sharing information that still conflicted with their operating system that was integrated. And this part of it kicks in, because a lot of times you think we're getting spiritual, all we're doing, you're maybe accessing certain parts, but if you don't keep this operating system at bay, and really this kicks in very powerfully and still projects light to dark, right, wrong, good, bad. They're demons, we're angels, we got to do this. And sometimes we get caught in the middle. Well, I don't want to see anything. I'm just a spiritual being. I'm just going to hold my energy, whatever it is. You can get easily caught into that. And I'm not saying you have to play any of the roles. Is really when you're in tune with yourself at that level of consciousness, you see the perfection of it, but you're emanating a certain part that is more, expansive. Go ahead.
Do you want to answer a couple questions, or like what's
Uh,
time wise? So when do you want to?
I want to cut off within 15 or so
Okay,
minutes,
so
if
I
not
have
10, because we keep
yeah,
going
I
into
know.
the 2
Let's
plus
just
hours.
keep it. I have 2 questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Terry's asking, when you mention about the activities being done during night, dark time, does the predictions of 3 days of darkness have anything to do with their agendas, i.e. fear-based predictions?
Well, the thing is, predictions are predictions. That means that it is on the table. Is it going to happen or not happen? It's really it's a choice that we make moment by moment, because we operate moment by moment. The whole blanking out of internet and so forth, some of that has happened, but in different pockets. The whole idea of the darkness, in most cases, is symbolic, in the sense of not having, all of a sudden we don't have any sun for 3 days, and so forth. It's a blackout that can happen, and what we're talking about is connection, so that we actually get an opportunity to connect with ourselves. If it creates fear, then the program's kicking in. This is kicking in for you, absolutely. So fear-based stuff is really this kicking in, and this is being projected. Now, these things are still working in your favor. I have to say this. As much as these may play whatever roles that they're playing, including these little puppies out there playing, which are aspects of these hybrids of ourselves, they're still serving us, and they're still looking for what you call the greater good. Okay? It may not look that way. It may not push it that way because they're pushing the polarization. But polarization, as much as it's not necessary any longer, but it's a lot of times it's the way that basically pushes us to the point. Going back to Neo again, he got from one battle to another to the point he gets shot, and then he finally comes to the realization, no, I'm not doing this anymore, right? So it's really is like, I'm not going to give power to this anymore because in essence, I'm a sovereign, powerful being. Now, when it comes to this whole idea of sovereignty, we are already sovereignty. We're already, infinite, what do you call individualized expressions within the collective, meaning the collective that everybody's an aspect of you, but you have a very integral expression as every single individual is. The whole idea that we're not sovereign was a projected idea to create herds and whatever else, a herd mentality and herd whatever, right? Go ahead. I'll let you ask the questions.
Okay, the other question is, okay, after 2D and the inverted 3D gone, will there be other beings more officially appearing to us and live happily together, like the one in Galaxy? I'm not sure what that means. I don't know if that's...
Well, if we're talking about our brother, sister souls that are in different forms, that are not on this planet or are in the planet but are not being exposed to us or not coming forward to see us and so forth, yes. Now, is it going to happen within the 3 years when we've purged that? More of it may happen. It being a larger part of it, it may be a little longer than that. Again, it's always monitored how to affect with it. I know some people say, well, there's nothing going on. A lot of it is light shows and whatever else that's going on, blue beam, whatever. As much as that's the case, our brothers, sister souls have been coming here for thousands of years. In fact, millions of years in a sense, because they're just us in different forms at different states of consciousness with different role playings that they have. And some of them are the engineers, some of them are overseers, some of them are actually coming in and reprogramming certain things and so forth. But so to answer that question, as we become less fearful, because you have to say, because we still have a lot of fear about it within ourselves, especially if the DNAs get more online, not if, when, as it's going along, then that level of comfort, because you have to understand each DNA represents a certain species, and those species are part and parcel of us, so there's a recognition that occurs, right? So for example, if you were French, just to use an analogy, but you're living in Canada, you're living in the United States, you're living in Australia, whatever it is. So now you say, well, I'm Australian, I'm Canadian, or American, or whatever. And, the thing is, you lost your ties with the French, but as soon as that connection kind of reactivates and you meet a French person, there's a commonality that comes in. Oh, yes, it's my home sort of thing. So there's a sense of homeness that occurs. And that's the same thing with the experience of our brother, sister souls. So that we will have more interactions along the way. To the degree that that's going to happen will depend on how far we go. So our planet is the hub of our quadrant of our galaxy. And it was always designed and programmed to host various species, brother, sister, souls, and to be able to come and to connect with us and share with us and whatever else and feel very comfortable. So along the way we will. Is there another question?
Okay, no, this is one we're going to go back to about the prisoners. The question, remember, was if everyone is to wake up in the next 3 years, what will happen with the millions of imprisoned for crimes they did during the inverted matrix?
Okay, so when we're out of this, then the right, wrong, good, bad, punishment, and all that stuff dissolves, and the operating system within them dissolves too. Now, some will choose not to stay here, and they would be unplugging themselves. Others will actually go into a different role. So the whole idea that, you know, they have to be punished or that they can't be trusted and all that will dissolve, because in essence they don't have to play those roles anymore. They're out of that hypnotic state operating within a certain program. So all of that actually ends up changing, what can I say, that integral operating system actually changes so that they're now no longer playing that, and the way we view them would be very different. So will they become part of us again rather than being confined? Yes, the ones that choose to do so, and others will either no longer be here because they choose to leave. You know, there's a lot of options to go. But the thing is, this whole separation, the fact that there's, you know, victims and victimizers and all these ones that have created crimes and whatever else or did whatever. Because a lot of the crimes are again, are programmed. And I won't have the time to go into it today, which we'll pick up the pace on Tuesday. But, you know, at this point, was there anything else you want to cap on there, or just going to cover a couple other points?
No, I was just going to say that because we're in a moment to moment life right now, even stuff like that, we don't even maybe have the, not the capacity, but the plan hasn't unfolded. There isn't any way to really predict exactly what's going to happen because we are creating it in the moment. So as we need to create it in a certain way for a certain reason, then we will.
Exactly. Now, the thing is, we have certain intentions, we have certain outline of how we want things to unfold, but the actual unfoldment step by step is determined moment by moment. And things can move up faster, a little slower, whatever is beneficial to support all aspects of ourselves. So it's all in alignment with that. A couple other things. A lot of symbolisms and symbols that you know, have been sort of what they call hijacked and everything else through this operating system under this viewpoint, creating polarity and whatever else. What was symbols that were used in very high vibration states of consciousness, you know, have been, you know, slightly modified or adopted, or in this case hijacked, like they call it. Some people call that, and so just to look at it and don't, you know, demonize any of that stuff, but just to see it, oh, okay, it's being used as this, but it was used as something else before, but eventually it gets neutralized in the sense where you don't label it as good or bad or right or wrong or higher and low and whatever else, and the symbols actually carry certain energetic patterns that may serve at certain points or not. Just so some of the programs of this operating system is, again, some of the traits is the control, ownership, and dominance. And that's what you see reflective. We're taught to control, to own, and dominance, including love. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about love next time we connect. But you know, ownership and control. This is why, you know, people take on certain roles. I got to own property. I got to own stuff. I got to own, or I need to control. I need to have power. I need to have all. This is all within these operating systems, because eventually, as we go out of that, ownership is no longer. It's an ownership in a sense where we all have access to everything, and we are all caregivers of everything, or what we call stewards of everything, and we create. We can create yeah, I draw a blank of how I was going to present it. What was I going to say? Yes. So we give a lot of power and so forth about this control, but becoming the steward of all of this, and in a sense, the sharing and so forth, where everybody supports all that is provided, and we provide it very freely, because the moment of when you own and try to control something, you limit yourself. This is the thing, and that's why I always want to project it, because if I need to own and control, I have to support it. I have to be bound to it, and then energetically bound to it, and all of that stuff. So it actually is outside of our true operating system, which is completely free flowing, creating, experiencing, and then discreating or moving forward through other stages of ourselves to step into it. Okay, so one last thing which I'm going to leave at that point. This operating system, with this, cannot, and I say this clearly, cannot shape our future or any part of our life. It has no power over that. It has to use, that's the agreement of its construct. The agreement of the construct says only collectively our realities are created. That means each one of us can only be part of your own creation and your own co-creation. Let me make that clear. This operating system with this software within us cannot in any way, shape, or form create our reality. What its only allowance it has is to convince us on its rules and whatever operating system to do it. That means this is why the systems exist. What does the systems do? The system trains us to believe, to see, to experience, to have preferences, to see what is and isn't about life. It programs us from an operating perspective of how to create the reality, because collectively we're creating it. This, all of us, are creating our world. Not this. Not one single iota. All this is creating an illusionary idea that we are telling you how to do it. So we are convinced. This is what the educational system is. This is what the media is. It convinces us life is this way. School says, you know, that creativity, imagination, that playfulness, that resourcefulness, that free thinking and spring, that doesn't work. No, 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 you can't have that. We're going to train you to believe what the rules and stories are. What happened, didn't happen, we tell you what is. Religion does the same thing. A lot of all the different infrastructures, media and everything else, we're teaching you a certain way so that you can create the reality within the program. The program can't do it. The operating system can't do it. The operating system only has access to convince you to do it, to program you to do it. Interesting. We are telling you what is. You're the one that has to do it because we're not allowed. In fact, we even have to tell you that you have to do it. We're just convincing you. We're programming you with the story. But we can't do it. As much as they came to change the operating system and plug in this part of it was only there to show us, but it didn't change our landscape until we adopted that operating system and started to change the landscaping ourselves. So I'm going to leave you with that because we're going to pick up from there and then go through all the various stages. So anyways, there's going to be a part 4. And we're going to meet on Tuesday at 4 p.m. To continue. So what I wanted to also share with you is I thank you for co-creating this and for being open enough to receive. Please share with who you feel guided to share. Just put it out there only to people that are feeling guided to do so. Again, I'm only sharing so that you're actually going into remembrance, triggering what you've always known. I know I keep hearing from people, well, you're connecting the dots. Well, I'm illuminating certain dots that you weren't seeing before, but really the dots were there. You're illuminating it within yourself. Certain pieces are coming together, and it's like, okay, this is what I've been feeling. Oh, this is what makes sense to me. I kind of felt it, but I didn't have a confirmation. Well, now I'm receiving a certain form of confirmation, and I'm getting a deeper understanding of how things work and so forth. So that's what's really it's happening, and it's just to stimulate your own remembrance to get into your driver's seat. That's all it is, because you're the one that decides to go into the driver's seat. I'm not doing it for you. I'm just sharing information. I'm sharing what you already know from within, and maybe not vocalizing, verbalizing, and whatever else. And we're doing this collectively because then it reinforces, because each one listening to this is already starting to make an alteration within themselves, and it's streaming from them. And then, of course, they're going to share or do whatever, right? So that's the first part. The other part is, as we're going along, this is there to stimulate not only your own knowing, but it's also to start creating own reality, because that part of you, that new you emerging through at this point is to facilitate all of this coming forward. If you haven't didn't get the last workshop, it's in the description, and Kimberly may share it on the comments. We also thank for all the beautiful contributors, and we're open for the contributions to assist us to put this out in a bigger way, and in one way also upgrade our technology to make it a little bit more efficient, and have certain people to assist us and so forth. Right now we're muddling through this, doing everything else at the same time. But anyways, so we thank you for that part of all whatever has been supported, and I'm really appreciative, and also we're open to receive that. One thing I wanted to say, 1 week from today, which is the 2nd of May, we're going to be having, do you want to launch that up? We're doing a global meditation on love and appreciation. We're going to be accessing the frequency of love in its most pure source form as possible, and appreciation of the game of life, the dance of life, we call it basically. So love and appreciation for the current dance.
Life dance.
What's that?
The current life dance we're in.
Okay, the current life dance that we're in. You can see it. It's displaying live right now because Kimberly put out the banner, so you can see it. And we're meeting at 2 p.m. Right? Correct. So 2 p.m. next Saturday, May the 2nd, we're going to be doing this global meditation that is going to access that part of it first within us, and then we're going to beautifully transmit it to illuminate, trigger, activate all these beautiful, powerful playmates that we have out there that are ready for it and are ready to light up and to share it. So we'll be creating like a web of energy throughout the whole planet. With this appreciation and love, we actually go into a very powerful state of creating change. We step out of disempowerment and we step into empowerment. We step into the creator essence that we truly are. It is not outside of our creation, okay? So we're now no longer operating within the old program of dictation, of being dictated how life is. We're going into an empowered state, bringing that beautiful essence of ourselves collectively to stimulate that, because all of us carry a very specific and powerful signature, imprint, energy, and also offering to this beautiful dance. We're co-creating it. That's so important. We're co-creating. So this meditation will be a collaboration of co-creation to be able to provide an opportunity to stimulate. This is all to really get to that form of appreciation and love, which is our true nature of ourselves. So we invite you to participate, for you to share with others. The post for that event will go out possibly this evening, if not tomorrow, for you to share with others the links, so that many more people can join us and be part of it. So we're just coming together and doing this. Is all online, and to come together to be able to do it. Please share.
Oh, I was just going to say I'll be sending in an email, so whoever's on our email list will also get it. Then they can share from that
Okay.
place as well.
Perfect. Yeah. So if you're not on our email list, then I would suggest to go to the website. It's also in the description, where it's francodinicola.com, and just join the community, and then you get onto the mailing list. We don't bombard you with emails. I'll tell you that much. We actually don't do all that much of it, but we do give you announcements, and we also provide you information of what's happening, what's not happening in regards to events coming up, or certain things that we're putting together, and so forth. So it's just really for that. It's not to bombard your inboxes with messages. We don't do that, and we don't share it with anybody else either. So so if you're not on the mailing list, let's do that. We will post it on Facebook. We will post it on YouTube. Of course, Vimeo will have it also, where the links will be there. So please share it with others, and just make everybody aware of it. But if you're not subscribed on the Advancing Consciousness series on YouTube, please subscribe. Then you can click the notification bell, because that will tell you when new live streams are coming up. And if you can't join us live, then you can always watch it on the video recording afterwards, because it will be available shortly after, maybe an hour or so. Sometimes it's less, depending on how busy YouTube operating system is. Same thing with Facebook. I mean, it's there. We have Advancing Consciousness series in the Facebook group. So there is a group called Advancing Consciousness series that you can also become part of it, be part of the group. And all the videos that we've been doing since we started are there. And we also put out announcements each time we have a new episode coming in, or a part of an episode. It's all there. So it's all available. So those are all the different things. Did I miss anything at this point, Kimberly, that I should share with people?
I think we're good.
All right. Again, we're trying to keep it shorter, but we tend to go over. So we'll pick up the pieces where we stopped now, and we'll carry on next Tuesday. So we'll see you then. So go have a blast. Go out and play.